if only you could see it, the first, oh, there we go. Thank you very much. Excellent. Anyway, we'll see whether we can move it on. Okay, well, hi everyone. So I'm just going to give you a little bit of an overview, but I hate just talking, so let's just make it interactive. I've got a few slides and we'll just move through them. So this one first says, and it's quite important, when we're at full scheme, the only scheme that's bigger in Australia than us will be the Medicare benefit scheme. So this is big. So, and you know that it's designed to provide disability supports to people with permanent, significant disability. And they have to be under 65 to access the scheme, so people over 65 don't come into the NDIS. They will access the aged care scheme. And the other important aspect is that everything that we do within the scheme, all the funding that we provide, is all geared towards achieving outcomes. So it's very different from the way Medicare operates. So that's important to know. Okay, so this was back in June. Unfortunately, we still don't have the September figures available to give everyone, but shortly after the end of June, we actually got to the first 100,000 people in the scheme. So that's a quarter, less than a quarter of what we will be at full scheme. Full scheme across Australia will be something in the order of 460,000 people. So it is a big scheme, and it's a lot of work to move it through. So I just put a few points up. So one of the things that you may be involved in is helping people get access to the scheme, and that might be because they're trying to complete an access request. The interesting thing about this scheme is it's not a referral scheme. So it's not that a doctor can write a referral and they can somehow or other get access to the scheme. It is about a participant or a person requesting to be a participant in the scheme. And for that they complete a form and they provide us with some demographic information and also information on the functional impact of their disability, which I'll run through in a moment. And that's where clinicians come in. They can help provide that information, and it's against each of the ICF categories. Okay. The other is that once participants are in the scheme, many of them need some kind of behavioural support management. So that's once again where psychologists come into the picture, and we'd expect you to develop a plan about how best to manage the person's behaviour that will end in a better result for that person and the people that they interact with, and we'd expect measurable results as to from those behaviour support plans, and also input into the training of other support workers who obviously are interacting with a person on a much more frequent basis. Some people who may not have quite that high level need, but their actual interpersonals are not what you would will allow them to access the community or participate in community activities. And so that's another area where funds may be available to utilise a clinical psychologist. Early childhood. So early childhood, early intervention is a particular model that we are utilising within the NDIS, and that would be where a psychologist is a member of the transdisciplinary or the interdisciplinary team that is providing that service. And so with children under 6, they don't necessarily come to the agent, well, they don't come to the agency at all in the first instance. They go to one of our ECEI providers, and you could be a member of that team. And then once they've gone through, they can get some limited early intervention, and then many of those children never come into the scheme for an actual fully developed plan. They just are assisted by the early childhood provider to access community services, and their parents don't have to worry about this thing called a disability insurance scheme. It's very off-putting for the parents of young ones. Some though do come in on an individualised plan, and then once that plan's developed and approved, they then will be assisted by that initial provider to access providers of their choice. So beyond that, they actually, and many of them will go to some of the specialist disability providers, so, you know, like CPA for a young one with cerebral palsy, etc. And then the other is we have a new opportunity for people in the scheme. They can there's various ways that they can look at their accommodation options. One is your traditional group home, but there may be other options where people are able to be supported in the community, perhaps in a shared housing arrangement. And we will be asking for assessments, usually by a bit of a multidisciplinary team, at least for some psychologists and OT, physio, depending on the disability type, and that's to work through what are the optimal housing options for that person, what support do they need, what are the issues around their actual physical or the built environment for them in that particular house, in the house they'll live in, and of course for yourselves, those with behaviour issues may often need a particular type of surrounds to enable them to live as independently as possible in the community, but still with some support and with some particular perhaps reinforcements or other options, including assistive technology for people with those problems. And just a reminder that clinical interventions are not in general the responsibility of the NDIS. They belong still with the health system, or whatever part of it that is. When we provide funds for the inclusion of therapist type services, it's for a limited period of time and it's just for a particular outcome. So that's important to know. Okay, so for over 7, this is the kind of things that we expect from health professionals. First of all, you know your own clients. You'll know the person from the treatment you're providing, perhaps in a hospital setting or in some other kind of clinical setting. And you can actually help people to understand what are the access requirements for the NDIS. So people that you'd see with more minor complaints like anxiety or whatever are unlikely to, almost inevitably, and hopefully through your intervention they'll never need a scheme like the NDIS. That's the thing. Keep as many people out as possible. You don't want them having a permanent disability. And as I say, you've already got a person-centred approach to your clients, and then you can provide evidence to support their access request. And so this just shows you how it's split up into the various areas, and the main thing that where you'll have some input is in that Part F, the disability supports. And that is then, as I said, it's built around the ICF categories. So mobility would be someone else's responsibility, but you could easily be asked for input on communication, social interaction, learning, perhaps some aspects of self-care. And self-management is about a person's ability to manage their funds. So that would go down to, you know, the responsibility. And as a minimum, they must be able to manage their own bank account as a minimum. I mean, you wouldn't expect anyone to have access to funds who couldn't do that. So what are we looking for? A diagnosis that is usually known. We put if known there because with little children there's often not a specific diagnosis, and we don't want people getting labels just to, you know, access some services. Sometimes the diagnosis may not be confirmed, so under our early intervention, even for adults, so someone may have some neurological symptoms, question MS, but no definitive diagnosis is being given as yet, but they may have some disabling results of the onset of the condition. and any assessment reports listed on the form itself, there is information on some of the generally recognised scales that are used for particular disabilities. So, of course, with spinal cord injury, level of lesion, the ASIA score that is associated with that. People with stroke, the modified Rankin scale. We do use the DSM-5 for intellectual disability and also autism spectrum disorder. And then but the most important part is not so much the name of the disability, the functional impact. Now that helps inform an access decision, but most importantly, when we come to actually develop a plan, it will help inform what supports are required to be funded in the plan. Okay, right now, we have an obligation under the bilateral agreement with the New South Wales Government to bring in everybody who's funded by them first. So this does leave out a whole lot of people who have put in access requests but are not yet able to access the scheme. So, so that is but we have got some coming in, and we've got a prioritisation process. And one of the main things is that if they're in the health system and they need assistance for discharge and they're likely to have a permanent disability, most probable they'll have a permanent disability, they are given access. People in the community, given priority access rather, people in the community, if there's a risk of homelessness without appropriate supports, they likewise will be given priority. And not yet, but the pressure's starting to mount, people in the corrective services system who also have a disability. But there's a whole lot of initiatives starting to happen with justice. Okay, so once you know that we like access to requests to be done as early as possible within the health system, because it often takes a lot of time to actually organise everything that a person might need post-discharge. But once you know there is significant functional loss and it's going to be permanent, then that's when we'd like to see an access request completed. And they'll actually, what happens then is that the person will be contacted by a member of our access team, and then they'll talk through some other issues and gain some more information in order to inform the access decision. Okay, with little ones, I said already, they go direct to an early childhood provider, and we certainly have developed the early childhood intervention best practice principles, which are published on our website, are published on ECIA website, so they're readily available to all of you. And what we're really looking to do is to assist little ones early, and then hopefully they will never need the scheme. And so they'll be assisted long before they turn age 6, so that when they actually go to school, they're in a much better position to benefit from what the education system can offer. And the other main thing about that is that we're looking to work with the families to educate them so that they know the best ways to assist their child's development. So it's not all reliant on dropping a child off at some therapist periodically and expecting some magic to happen and then walking away again. So that all gets built into the plan for the child and the family. Okay, that's just a bit more about it. I'll skip over that. So this just gives you the picture of what happens. We encourage all the paediatric clinics and everyone and GPs, whoever, who meets the child and the family to get them connected to one of our ECI providers, get some information, work out what's required, and then assist them they will help community services. So they will help an early childhood setting in their locality to actually respond to the child's needs. So the idea is that we are providing services that are useful, not only at the end of the day for that child, but also broadening the ability of an early childhood service to cater for young ones with disability. or with developmental delay really, we're mainly talking about there. And then if there is a need for an access for an individualised plan, they will work with the family to actually put that application in, and they will write the preliminary plan so we know what the child needs. So the other aspect of it is we're also, and you would have seen ads appearing, and the applications for these types of services will be due at the end of the month, and that's about what's called information linkages and capacity building, and that is actually to fund services that can be there in the community, not just for NDIS participants, but for others who might have a lower level of disability but need assistance, need advice, need information, and need connecting with other mainstream services. And part of that is the local area coordinators that we contract with to be out in the community and meet participants before they become participants, help them get access if they need it, and ultimately, if that's not what they're going to do, then help them connect with mainstream services. That's still a very early stage development that we've got happening there, because the concentration has been on bringing in the state government funded people so they've got access to the scheme. That just gives you a picture of how it's spread out across New South Wales. We are right across New South Wales now. So from July this year, we spread geographically so that we now cover all of rural New South Wales and all of the metropolitan area. But for many, last year in 16-17, we started about 50% of the state, added to that the rest of the state in July this year, and we're now moving our way through the people who are eligible in those areas. Oh, that's just remote. We've got a particular, is anyone from the remote area part of New South Wales? All right, well, skip over that, but we've actually got another new model that we're trialling in those regions. Support coordinators, you may come into contact with one of these people. So, or you can be one yourself for that matter. So this is designed because we know that people with disability have never had this opportunity before. They've never, no one's ever said to them, here's what we think, or this is what you've told us you want to achieve. Here's a bundle of money to go and do it. And it is broken up more than that, but put crudely, that's basically what it is. They've not been exposed to something like this before, so we knew that they would need assistance to get there. So we developed this role called a support coordinator, and once we actually approve a plan, particularly people who've got complex needs, they might be needing to access different service sectors, then we will put funds in for what we call a support coordinator. And then we will connect that person to that support coordinator, and then they will sit with the person, help them to work out which providers they want to use to provide the funded supports in their plans, what mainstream services they want to access and how they're best going to be able to go about that. And most importantly, they are there to help the person to become more independent, to enable them to self-advocate and to actually start to organise their own life, their own things they need to overcome the impact of disability. So as we say to all the support coordinators, you are not there for a person's life, you are there to make yourself redundant so that you actually are providing the necessary education and empowering and skilling up the person to be able to take it on their own behalf. But during that first early time, being available, because once people start to go out and try things, it's not always going to work first time. So they need someone there to back them up, to be there behind them. it's pretty much built around my own profession, which is rehab counselling, to be honest. But anyway, and because, you know, and it's about outcomes, helping people get outcomes. So the people who get it, those with the more severe of the severe disabilities, young people in residential aged care, we're now working through meeting a lot of those young people and bringing them into the scheme. Anyone who's involved with the child protection or criminal justice areas, they're going to need additional help. And then some participants come to us and they've got a history of frequent breakdown of service provision, providers not wanting to know about them or them not wanting to know about providers, or a bit of both, and so they're going to need someone to assist them as well. And those in particular with challenging behaviour, and providing additional assistance, and trying to get that integration between all the service providers, something that is frankly sadly lacking when we first meet people. It's very, very disorganised. I don't know how people have coped, to be honest. That just gives a little bit of a summary. Important thing is that our own staff make all the significant decisions, so we don't outsource decision making. So decisions on access are made by staff within the agency. Decisions on the final plan and what goes into the funding in plans is made in the agency. And any request for a review of any of the decisions, once again, come back to the agency. But our partners in the local area coordinator or our own internal ones or a support coordinator assist at various times during that whole plan process. It's quite a good slide because it shows when they come in and what they do and what they don't do, most importantly. Okay, it's based in legislation. All of what we do, it's not just a policy decision that was taken on a particular day by a particular government. This is all grounded in the 2013 NDIS Act, which also has some rules which interpret further some sections of the Act. And then alongside of that, we also have developed operational guidelines, and they're a more plain English version of the way in which the agency will operationalise the parts of the Act. So it particularly goes around the funding for supports and what is considered reasonable and necessary. So the term reasonable and necessary supports is defined in the Act. It's further spelled out in the rules, and then the operational guidelines pick up particular types of supports, particular categories, and expand on how the agency will apply that legislation and policy in a practical sense. So the operational guidelines, they're quite easy to find. Just use our website, put in, you want to know about behaviour support. Oh, that's probably not a good example. It could be there, but it wasn't there very long ago. More things like personal care, community access, home modifications, etc. Operational guideline, and it'll bring it up for you. Access, operational guideline, it'll bring that up for you. The other thing that sits over all of this is a quality and safeguarding framework. At the moment, that is still run by the New South Wales government in this state and by the various state and territory governments in every other state and territory. However, come July next year, we will be the first to go, New South Wales and South Australia will be the first to become subject to the National Quality and Safeguarding Commission. So that will all switch over and everyone will be pretty pleased, I think. We'll finally have consistency across the nation. Oh, with a few exceptions, of course. They haven't been able to give up some things. Reasonable and necessary supports. I'll just run you through this because this is how we make our decisions. The first is, whatever we're going to fund, you must be able to demonstrate that firstly, it will overcome the impact of the person's disability and assist that person to pursue their objectives or their goals. We've dropped the term aspirations, to be honest. No one ever understood it. It will, and it's an and, they're all ands, and it will assist the participants' social and preferably economic participation. it must represent value for money. So we're looking for a few things there. We're looking for how it is likely or probable to be effective and beneficial for that participant. Now that can be the evidence that's come out of great clinical trials, etc., when you're talking about interventions, or it might be that you've trialled something individually with a person and you are of the belief that this will continue to assist the person to make progress. But if you're doing that, of course, you will have to spell out what measures you've applied and what results you've achieved and what results you expect to achieve in the future. We also need to take account of what is reasonable for families and informal networks to actually provide to a person. So personal care for a child, we don't fund that because that's parents who do that. For an adult, it's not reasonable that a mother is expected to bathe her adult son or daughter. So that is where paid supports can be put in. So it's thinking about all those things. It's also thinking about, apart from the reasonableness of it, what people want. So some people would want paid assistance, other people will say no, I don't want that stranger in my house. Well, they might say, during the week we're all busy, we'll have paid support then, but at the weekend we're all here and we don't want it then. Yeah.
Is there exceptions to that when a parent is unable to provide that care, for instance, if they have a disability themselves?
Yeah.
Exceptions to that?
There will be some exceptions. An exception will be, like we don't provide household assistance generally, but where a mother has more than one child with a disability, it's very taxing, and she can actually attend to the children's needs if we provide some domestic assistance for her. Or if we provide assistance with the child with disability, so with a very significant disability, so the mother can attend to the needs of other children in the family.
Is that the same for psychosocial disorders? Psychosocial
Yeah.
disabilities?
Yeah, it would be. There's no difference really in my view.
So someone in their 30s with schizophrenia, for example.
So like who's a mother as well, you're thinking?
Well, no, I'm saying who has elderly family.
Oh, I've got an elderly family, yeah, no. So people with psychosocial disability, thanks for raising that, they're entitled to the same as a person with a physical disability. It depends on their function, what their functional needs are. So someone who doesn't self-care, doesn't take care of themselves, you know, just of their own initiative, and mum's always had to, you know, and she's wearing out, and so we could put in a paid support worker, and that way they could assist the person to, you know, be more independent really. Yep.
Because I would see a lot in the hospital where I work, I see a lot of people who, you know, are very complex with comorbid like psychosis and different issues, who really could do with people coming in to provide oversight on their medication taking, for example.
Yeah, they can be part of their daily activities. Yeah, I mean, it wouldn't send someone in just for medication generally, but if there's other things and they would become part of it. Yeah, and then hopefully getting them to a state of independence where they might just do a check on them or whatever. Good luck. Yeah, we all hope.
Question: who decides what's value for money?
Us.
I know that, but what qualifications do those people have?
So we basically do a cost-benefit analysis. So a very simple one would be, if I pay for this expensive hoist and access to a bathroom, does that reduce the need for 2 attendants? So the cost-benefit on that over a lifetime goes tick, yep, pay you $20,000 now, and over that person's lifetime you've saved a hell of a lot more than that.
Because I was just thinking of a situation where if you had someone you wanted to write a behavioural management plan for,
yeah,
and you need to do in-house observations in their school and everything, is that funded as well? So you need to do, most people do like 10 to 20 hours of observation and then write the report. Do you fund the whole 20-something hours?
No, we wouldn't fund 20 to start with. We'd fund around about 10 hours for an assessment and report. Yep, so that, and then you'd have to come back and tell us what exactly it is that you want to do, And part of that would be then, you know, you can develop up a support plan, you can train others, such as the teachers in a school or the support workers who are with the person, to actually put that plan into effect and then monitor it as time goes on. Hang on, there's a guy down the back who's been wanting to...
This isn't a trick question, but it's a tricky situation. A lot of us work with what are called severe and persistent mental health problems.
Yep.
Which is code for really bad, nasty psychosis.
Yep.
And often interventions move at a glacial pace, and sometimes the best we can do is put the brakes on the downhill slide over a long course of time. There's a lot of unclarity, is a polite word, between the health delivery system
Yep.
and the private sector over who does what, who should do what. And if we discharge this person to the private sector, you're responsible for what is traditionally called case management. In the public sector, they're pushing to pay for it in the private sector. And if you live in one particular area of New South Wales, you can get a mobile treatment team that'll visit you twice a day, 7 days a week for years. And if you live on the other side of the catchment line, you just won't get anything close to that. And I guess my question is, there's no clear boundary in what you were saying. Treatment goes back from the treatment providers currently, and this is something not treatment, but it's a very ambiguous difference. These things can go on forever. You may want to have goals, but they're going to be very short-term, modest goals.
Yeah.
Because you're really looking at truly a chronic presentation.
Yep.
Any thoughts? I mean, that's the kind of area a lot of us work in mental health.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, the problem we have is that the health system is so disparate. That's one of the problems. And also there is a lack of clarity in the interface between health and NDIS. And in fact, there are a whole lot of questions at the minute that we're working our way through. I've got to admit it's more in the physical disability area at the moment. But it is something that will need to get tackled, you know, a bit more definitively in the mental health area. And one of the things we've got is that just because it's not delivered by that particular service sector is not a reason for NDIS to fund. So that goes to those, you know, distinctions between one health district and another. One of the things that I have been very surprised at is the regression of community mental health since I last worked in disability. I have been truly amazed and disappointed. Now, I know a lot of it's gone into the non-government sector, so what are they actually doing is part of the question that I have, but anyway, that's a whole other political issue. So look, it's not clear, except what is clear is that where a person has a chronic problem, and it's not the medication, you've tried a whole range of things, the medication does what it does, as best it does to maintain the person at a certain level, but they still need additional assistance. The additional assistance generally can come from NDIS, but not if it's supposed to be some, I mean, we wouldn't, you know, like if you need a registered nurse to be doing injections or anything, we wouldn't be providing that. That would be health. Because we've got to keep the responsibility and the duty of care where it should lie. Because it always worries me, they're going to go, oh yeah, you know, this will be delegated responsibility, we'll have a disability support worker doing this. Oh my God.
Is that clearly written out somewhere?
Oh, kind of. There is actually quite a lot written.
I go to a lot of working party meetings and I don't hear clarity.
Yeah, I know. Look, can I tell you something? The mental health sector is also their own worst enemy. You know.
Sometimes we are, yes.
Yeah, they really don't want clarity. They don't want NDIS. So things get muddied and things get put out into the public domain, which upset and make everyone very anxious. So just working quietly behind the scenes would be a better way to go. There is quite a lot published on our website now on mental health. So I would encourage you to have a good read of that. Yeah.
I have an adolescent client who's on a self-management plan. That is what the caseworker said to me.
I hope the parents are managing.
Well, they get the lump sum of money.
No, they don't get a lump sum of money.
Well, they get allocated
They get allocated some dollars, yes.
Yes, so my...
They get allocated a budget,
Yes.
actually, yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's the planner or the coordinator who helped them with putting together the plan for the next calendar year.
Right.
But basically, I wasn't told they were on NDIS until I was asked to write a progress report for the paperwork for next year's plan.
Right.
And then I sent off the letter and I heard nothing back. So my question is, if they're allocated funds and part of the funds is for psychological services, how do I know, because if they're not coming frequently, because for this client, it's in the private sector.
So why were you asked to write a report though?
I was asked to write a report because they've been receiving NDIS funding and then next year they're receiving funding as well, and part of the funds will go to psychological services. And the lady from NDIA managing this family contacted me directly with the mum, asked me to write a progress letter.
Oh, okay.
And then I kind of heard nothing back. So I'm just wondering, like, what is my expectation?
Well, that's support. I presume she had a support coordinator who was the one who's a funded service. They're not one of us. Or it could have been a local area coordinator.
She didn't make that clear.
Oh,
But
okay.
my
It's always ask. It's good to ask.
My question was, you know, I have no idea in terms of the expectation how often they should be coming. So at the moment.
Oh, no. Well, that's up to you.
That's up to me.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so you can recommend what would be required if you're going to oversee this young person's, you know, further development and independence. So you could say, look, I want to see them once a month because this is the kind of strategies I'd be putting in place with them, or whatever it is. I'm making that up, but yeah. So if that, and then if it's going to be funded by the scheme, it will only be funded by the scheme if that's towards a certain thing. If it were maintenance therapy, then that would be the health system.
So if I saw the young person once a week for 12 months, would all those
Ooh, no.
Yeah, so that's,
No.
So how do I know, like, how many?
So you have to ask them, what funds have you got? Show me what you know, what is the, and on our plan, it will have what the funds are for, so what it's meant to achieve. So it might be to ensure that they're able to continue to go to school, that they're managing their anxiety or whatever it is.
So I should ask for the actual plan.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. And the support coordinator can help you, or the local area coordinator can help you access that. Yep. Sorry, we've got questions coming. Yeah, go. Go on. Yep. Yeah.
If funds have been allocated for psychological services through the NDIS?
No, not for psychological services. We never do that. What we will allocate funds for is what the outcome the person wants to achieve. So we might, for example, say they want to improve their social interaction, or they want to be able to go to school regularly, and in order to do that, they need to, to further their education, they need to reduce their anxiety, or whatever it is they've told us. So we agree on the outcome.